So I think that's enough from me. I'm going to now pass you over to Toby, and I really do hope that you enjoy your tasting. Toby?
Hi everyone. Welcome to this tasting, yes, because we're going to taste some wines and also talk with Rafael Urrejola. We were just talking before this about when I first met Rafa. It seems like a very short time ago, but in fact, I think we agree now it was 2002. And Rafa was at Vineyard LEYDA and making wines from really the first vineyards planted there. And I was astonished by his ability and his intelligence right from the very start. And he has continued on that trajectory, and I think today is really one of Chile's greatest winemakers. He has a mastery of all different styles, and what I really like about Rafael's style is that he picks grapes that are ripe but not overripe, doesn't over oak wines. So for me, they have a sort of balance of wines that I like, where the quality of the fruit and the terroir shine through without too much winemaking. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rafael, who's going to give a little talk about Chile, about Undurraga, and we're going to taste a couple of wines afterwards. Rafa, over to you.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm Rafael Urrejola, a head winemaker from Undurraga. I don't know what to say after those nice words from Toby. But well, I've been in the winemaking from almost 20 years, making wines, first in Vineyard LEYDA and now in Undurraga for the last 12 years. And it's a pleasure to have this talk with the people from Wine Society, especially with Toby that we met for a long time. And Toby and the Wine Society were actually one of the first, if not the first, supporters of the wines I made here in Chile, and it's been like almost 20 years of this supporting. So I really appreciate all the attention that the Wine Society has put on our wines, and it's of course a pleasure to sell the wines through the Wine Society because of all the tradition and history and reputation of good wines. So I'm very glad to be here with you, and I really hope that this could be interesting. I would like to talk a little bit about Chile. We are, I know probably not a lot of people know things about Chile, but it's not. It's always interesting to make a summary and talk a little bit about Chile's characteristic in terms of winemaking before go and taste the wines. I think it gives a little bit of information that it could help to appreciate more the wines or to understand better why we make what we make. So after that, well, I will show you some slides. Of course, I would love to have this in person, but because of the situation we are all living, we have to do it this way, but I hope it's going to be fun for all of us. So I'll start we can maybe show some slides to start the presentation. I don't see them, so there are. Okay, so probably you all know where Chile is. We are like in a down corner of South America, and there are some pictures about our geography that is really diverse, and we had a lot of differences through our country. It's not a very big or large country, but it's very long in terms of latitude country, and it's very dramatically constructed by the geology. So we actually have many different climates, many different types of soil, as you can see in the pictures. So, and that has a very big impact in where we can make wine that I will get in deep later on. So these are some pictures of the north of Chile, where we have a desert, mountains, ocean, etc. Here in this map, we can see the most known regions, viticultural regions, where we make the wine. In the upper part is Limarí and Elqui Valley, which are some areas where we produce wine very close to the desert. Then around Santiago, to the coast and to the south, we have like a central area where the main amount of wine comes from Chile. And then to the south, we also have some different valleys and areas where we produce wines. And all these regions are very, very different. So the idea of this presentation and the wines we're gonna taste later on is to show you and to share with you how different Chilean wines could be. For many years, we've been renowned, or even us, we sell like Chilean wine as a very safety, everyday wine from Chile, but it's actually changed dramatically where it comes from. If it comes from the north, from the coast, from the south, are totally different wines. And I hope at the end of this presentation, you can have more knowledge and you can have more information about all of this. We can move to the other one. So as I mentioned, we have different areas where we grow wines. Here at Undurraga, we produce wines in all of the different regions that we can produce in Chile. And here are some pictures about some of our states. LEYDA is by the coast of the central coast of Chile. Maipo and Colchagua and Cachapoal are in the Central Valley, and Cauquenes is much farther south. So today I will talk, and I hope some of you will taste some wines from all of these different vineyards. Some new vineyards, some new regions being developed in the last 10, 20 years, and also some very old regions that were developed in the early 20th century, and even earlier than that. So here's like a time scale, a brief introduction to you about our winery. Undurraga Winery was founded in 1885, so we are one of the 3 or 4 more the oldest wineries in Chile. And some important things that we've done in the history. In 1929, we got our first gold medal in Europe from a cabernet sauvignon from Maipo, and then from that time up to the 2000 years, Undurraga has been a very traditional winery, very known because of the tradition, family owned, very classic winery from Maipo, and not necessarily innovative and modern winery. So in 2006, the Undurraga family decided to sell the part. They moved to another smaller project, and they sold the winery to 2 families, one Italian Colombian family and another Chilean family. And in that year, they realized that Undurraga needed to be more innovative, needed to get more updated with the world of wine. We needed some more modern style of wines, and we made a big change at that year of the winery. So we invest in better vineyards. We make some contracts with important producers in different areas of Chile. We invest a lot in the winery, and the more important, they invest a lot in people. In the past, there was only one winemaker that was making all of the wines of Undurraga, which are several types. And in that region, people create a team. Actually, in that year, in 2007, I joined the winery. we create a team of winemakers to have more input in style, in personality of the wines, and also to work with more resources of grapes and technology. So in 2008, it was launched a new portfolio that really changed Undurraga in the world of wine, coming from a traditional, classic, at that time, I can say maybe old-fashioned winery, to a much more modern and dynamic winery that we are now. Unfortunately, in the recent years, we have seen some results of that in terms of some awards, in terms of critics, and also in terms of good sales in important market as the UK. So all of these efforts has been rewarded at the end. So as I said, 2006 was the new beginning. We planted new vineyard, invest in new technology, and also I think the most important was to make this new team of winemakers that we can see in the next slide. So at that time we were talking about young winemakers. Maybe we're not that young anymore, but still all the different kind of wines we're making as a team, but we are with our own personality and with our own style of wines, and that make a huge difference in the alternatives of wine that we can produce and how we can approach to the different markets. Some markets are very traditional. It's easy to sell wine in Latin America, even in the United States. There is more standards, but when you go to markets that are much more developed, as the UK market, for example, you really need to show some diversity, some personality in the style of wines. And working as a team, it has made a big difference in how the quality of the wines and the personality of all the different ranges has been developed. Can go to next. And as I said before, fortunately, we have seen some recognition about this. We have seen the results of making wines from different areas in different scales, from different soil and climate conditions. Tim Atkin is a big support of us. The IWC also, Jancis Robinson has written good things, and well, of course, for Chilean winemakers to have the wines in the Wine Society portfolio is a very important step. So I think all what we have done in the last years has been getting some good results that I think sometimes it's important for the people to know, because it's not that relevant that a critic really like the wines for the people that are buying the wines, but sometimes it gives you feel more sure about what you're getting if some important critics has good comments about the winery. In the past, Undurraga didn't have a lot of this recognition, because as I said, it was more like everyday wine, more traditional wines. Nowadays, we are in the radar of these critics, and we in the radar of people that really know about wines, and that is a good advantage for us now. Also, Decanter is important supporter for us. As I said, the International Wine Challenge. So and also we get good critics and good awards in different wines. It's not that we have one wine that is normally getting the nice critics. It's very open in our range. So that means that I think we're doing the things pretty well, and we are getting to, especially the UK market and European market, with the style of wine, as Toby mentioned before, the style of wine we like to make fits very well with your palate, with the palate of the people the UK and Europe. So it's been a good match what we have done in the last years. So today we will taste 4 wines out of 2 different regions. They're both exclusive labels and blends that we make especially for the Wine Society. And I think maybe some of you have the wines. I'll be tasting with Toby together. But before start the tasting, I would like to talk a little bit more about these 2 areas that where we make the wines that we're gonna taste. That is the LEYDA Valley, and that is the Cauquenes Valley. Before that, it's important, I think, you to know a little bit more about the viticulture in Chile, because that will make sense why we are making wines in these regions. Here is maybe if you can press a bit the slide, it will appear. There's in '93, for example, in the red arrows, that's where the latitudes where the Chilean viticulture moved by those years. It was mainly produced. The wine was mainly produced in the Central Valley. We call it like the comfort area because it's warm, it's safe, it's dry. So we can produce every year very consistent wines with different ranges of prices and quality. But it's very, everything is very, what do you say, positive. The conditions are very positive for making wines. Then up to 2003, we all start to move a bit the boundaries of our viticulture, a little bit more north, a little bit more south, to the coast, to the Andes, searching for more for cooler climate to get more delicate, more elegant wines, and also to get more diversity in the Chilean wines. And now in 2018, or right now in 2020, we have been increasing that latitude distance where we're making the wines, making wines up in the desert, very close to Peru, to our frontier with Peru, and also in the islands in the south of Chile, very close to the ice fields in the Patagonia, like some experiments in Chile Chico with Pinot Noir that we were participating. So the viticulture in Chile has been changed a lot in the last 20, 30 years in terms of latitude. We have been taking advantage of the differences of our country, the geology, the climate, and we are taking more risks. And some trials, some adventures has been working, other ones has not. But I think Chile now is getting much more dynamic, much more innovative, and every year you will be hearing about new areas, new vineyards. So we are moving a lot in that sense. We think it's necessary for the market of wine, but it's also necessary for us to understand more our country and to try to make wines in more regions. And even more important than latitude, that is indeed very important because the climates, the rain, all the conditions that we get in different latitudes. In Chile is very important the climate variability between east and west, or west to east. Even though we're a very narrow country, as I show in the map, there's a huge difference in temperatures depending how close or how far you are from the Andes Mountains or from the Pacific Ocean. Just to remind that in Chile, the Pacific Ocean is really, really cold. It's very different to Colombian Pacific Ocean or California, you know. We get the Humboldt current, that's Antarctic current coming from the south, that really, really makes the ocean very cold, and that produces a lot of cool breezes that bring the temperatures really down in the coastal part of Chile. Then we have central plain or the Central Valley, which gets really warm because we have two, as you can see in the picture, we have two mountains range. One is the coastal mountain range that stops the influence from the Pacific Ocean, and then we have the Andes, that is another influence of cool breezes and cool wind. So in Chile is very different where you grow vineyards, wine, where you produce wine in terms of temperatures. If you are in the Central Valley, which can get really, really warm in the summer, or if you're up to closer to the Andes or by the coast of Chile. And the differences could be very, very high, very extreme. In January, for example, which is our warmest month, at the same time in the Central Valley, in Maipo, for example, could be 35 degrees Celsius. And at the same time in LEYDA, which is in the coast of Chile, influenced from the ocean, it can be 22 degrees. And maybe for us humans, it's a big difference. But for the grapes, it's a totally different world. So the varieties that you can make properly in a Central Valley are very, very different to the varieties that you can make properly in the coast of Chile or in the Andes. So this explains why all of the wineries or winemakers were moving from the Central Valley to cooler climates, cooler conditions, more extreme conditions for the vines, in order to produce wines with more character, with more personality, and with more freshness. That is something that I really look for in the wines. And as probably you all know, together as climate, soil is very important for the wine. And in Chile, we're fortunately to have 4 groups of soils that are very important in the wine world. Most of our valleys, our areas where we produce wines, we call valleys because are formed by rivers that come from the Andes to the Pacific Ocean. And most of them they have formed alluvial soils, alluvial terraces, which this is the first gravel soil. And this gravel soil it has a lot in common with other wine regions in the world that are very famous for red wine. So the connection between an alluvial soil and a good red wine it happens in a lot of parts of the world. Bordeaux, for example, is all alluvial. Napa Valley, Maipo Valley in Chile, or Barossa in Australia, they're all alluvial soils. So there's a reference of high quality reds with alluvial soil. Also, colluvial is more technical because it's like a Piedmont, it's like a rocky soil from the Andes, but works in the same direction. We have some granite soil. All of our coast of Chile is on granite, and granite is also a soil that is very important in the northern Rhone, for example, in some parts of Alsace, in Australia as well. It's a very mineral and restricted soil that makes that helps to make very good wines. And of course, chalk is not that relevant, or we don't have a lot of surface in chalk in Chile, but probably most of you know the connection between chalk, limestone soil, with the finesse of the whites of Pinot Noir, even Merlot that we can get from France and from other parts of the world. So we do have some chalk spots in some of our valleys, especially in the coast and in the north of Chile. And in the last years, we have been taking advantage of that and making wines from these areas, from these soils, and getting wines with a much better quality and personality. So what I wanted to say with these slides is that Chile is very different. So you have different types of soils, different types of climates, and those different matches makes many different conditions to make interesting wines. So, and out of the diversity, I really like this slide, because Chilean length is 2,600 miles length, and if you put that in a European map, it's like starting from Lisbon in Portugal and going all the way through Spain, France, Italy, Germany, and ending up in Helsinki. You know, that's the Chilean length of latitude. So if you can imagine all the different wines that you have in this surface in Europe is the wine society complete. You know, it's most of the wines from the world come from this area, and they're very different. They're different in style, in varieties, in expression. So our next goal, our challenge in Chilean winemaking is to show that we can make wines from different regions, and of course we are good making the everyday wine, supermarket or comfort wine as we call that, because we sell a lot of that. It's very consistent, and it's good that we're happy to have it. But our challenge is to really show the world that because of the diversity of climates and soil that we have, that I already mentioned, we can actually make wines from different parts of Chile, totally different from each other. And that's what we're making in the last years. Also, it's, I'll say it again, Wine Society has been great support of that, because in the portfolio, we have wines from maybe 4 or 5 different regions that we are producing. And we're going for more. Now we're making wines out of 12 different regions in Chile, totally different from each other. If you put the slide again, that's the Chilean length. So it gets all this part of Europe. So today we'll taste 2 wines from a range we call Finca Las Lomas. Both of them comes from the LEYDA Valley. That's from the coast of Chile, so cool climates that are coming from the central coast, influenced by the ocean. We will taste a Sauvignon Gris and a Pinot Noir from this area. To show this, the next slide, I will talk a little bit about the area where we are taste. So, on the right side of the slide is Santiago, which is where it's a big city, and then Santiago is in the middle of the Central Valley, so it has this warm, safety climate, dry summer, and very warm conditions to grow grapes around Santiago. But if we move to the west, can you pitch a bit the slide? LEYDA is to the west of Santiago, and it's really just the other one. Yeah, so it's really close to the, as you can see, it's really close to the ocean, to the San Antonio Bay. And in the right side of the yellow spot, there's the coastal range of mountains. So it's on the west side of this, so it's getting all the influence from the Pacific Ocean. And that's a huge difference from any other region because of as I said, of the temperatures. Here, even though we are 45 minutes from Santiago, from the Maipo Valley, which is a warm area, here the temperatures and the weather conditions are much more similar to, I don't know, Sonoma Coast in California, even to Burgundy in France. So it's a really, really cool climate in terms of temperatures. And because of that, we have planted start planting in the 90s, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. So varieties that adapt much better to cool climates, and that give much better wines, more interesting wines in those varieties. So in Undurraga, we developed a vineyard in 2007, where it's the vineyard where we'll taste the wines, where they come from. And it's, as I said, it's very influenced for this Pacific influence, wind, mist. So it's less sun here, cooler temperatures, and all of this make possible to make brighter, fresher, more mineral, salty wines. And that's the main characteristic of this area. So here are some pictures about LEYDA. This is a picture from the vineyard. So it's really open to the ocean, so it's facing the ocean. And also the soil is a mix of granite, but also some chalk component. So it's a very interesting soil to work with because it can add some mineral dimension to the wines. It's not just the fruit, just the expression of the variety. So here we get some important expression and influence from the soil. And here's some pictures of the. So I think it's and that's the size of LEYDA. That's the size of appellation. It's a small appellation, so you don't find a lot of LEYDA wines in the market because it's a relatively new area and it's not a big appellation. So most of the wines are more exclusive and made in small scales. So it's an area that where I've been making wines here from 20 years. So I've been learning a lot about it, understanding the climate and the soil conditions, and with a lot of trial and error, I think after 20 years, wines are very connected to to the place, to the origin. So they really show, I think, the characteristic of LEYDA. So maybe we can taste now the wines. Well, this is a bottle. This is a Sauvignon Gris. It's called Finca Las Lomas, 2019. So first of all, what is Sauvignon Gris? Because it's a not common variety. Sauvignon Gris is a clonal mutation. It's a mutation from a Sauvignon Blanc. That's the origin is Bordeaux actually. But people from Chile, Argentina, New Zealand, they brought it into our countries, and we start developing and making wines out of this grape. It's not very common. It's actually very rare to find it. Not a lot of wineries are producing wines out of this variety because not a lot of people know the variety, and also because it's most of the times it's not as aromatic, it's not as intense as the Sauvignon Blanc. But I think if we make it properly and in a good area like LEYDA, as I mentioned, it can give some very interesting wines. And I think that's one of the reasons that Toby picked this wine for the Wine Society. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the wine, Toby.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like maybe you to talk about it because you know it better, but I think it is, as you say, it's quite unusual. There's a little bit in Saint-Brie and Chablis, near Chablis. Mm-hmm. But I think for those people who find maybe Sauvignon a bit too overt and in your face, Sauvignon's really nice, isn't it? Because it shares some of the characteristics. It's fresh, it's bright, but it has a sort of a slightly peachier flavor, a little sort of rounder, musky note to it. And it's quite intriguing because you have hints of the Sauvignon and hints of something slightly richer. And yes, at the same time, you have this very nice mineral palate. So it's actually a very complete wine. And I think very unusual. And, you know, I think you make it very well. And it's a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for us, it's especially this vintage, the 19 vintage, which was a bit warmer vintage than usual. It's the aromatic profile is totally different to the Sauvignon Blanc. It's as you mentioned, it's richer in the palate. I think it has more density, it's like silky, and I found some even sort of exotic fruit in the nose. I found some lychee, some peaches, even some fresh pineapples, you know, but very subtle, not in the too expressive dimension that sometimes can be a bit boring after a few glasses. I think it's quite delicate, the perfume of the wine, and the palate is not maybe as edgy as Sauvignon Blanc. It's rounder, silky. I think is the word for me, because it's a wine that is really like overwhelm your palate, and it makes it very drinkable. So I think it's a very, very good alternative for people that like Sauvignon Blanc, but start like tasting the same. It's like a nice, interesting cousin of Sauvignon Blanc.
Exactly, and as you say, it's intriguing, isn't it? It has all the nuances that you suggest without the, you know, if you like, Sauvignon can be sort of rather overriding, monolithic, one sort of flavor. This has got different facets, and as you say, it's not quite as powerful or as intense, but it has very interesting facets. You have to look for them a little bit. But you know, for those people who find Sauvignon Blanc a bit too aggressive, you know, this is or even those who like Sauvignon Blanc but want to change. Of Sauvignon Blanc with different nuances and a different palate, and I think it's fun that I think we'd all get bored if we had to eat lobster every day, and we'd all get bored if we just had to stick to one variety. So you know, variety is the spice of life. So to be able to have something slightly different like this, I think is very interesting.
Yeah, it's also wine that it's made in a very small scale. We only produce about 7,000 bottles of this wine, so everything we take care about the right amount of oxygen during the winemaking. We have learned that Sauvignon Blanc doesn't need to be so close because we all learn in university that we need to keep it very protected not to lose the aromas. But at the end, we're working now in all the opposite way. We are getting rid of all the more greener or the phenols or the more aggressive aromas and flavors, and understanding better the variety, and making wine that is gonna age very well. So the bottle also gives helps the wine to this expression, to this wideness in the palate. I'm very happy to work with this grape because it's a variety that we were not paying a lot of attention 2 or 3 years ago. It was just going into blends, and when we start with the idea of producing these wines for you guys, it's been a challenge, and it's been a very nice experience, because I think Sauvignon Gris is a variety that could make very interesting wines, indeed.
And is this tank fermented in stainless steel, kept on the lees, or do you have a bit of, I know you're quite a fan of concrete eggs. How is this fermented and matured?
Well, this is it's fermented in stainless steel tank, but with a little bit more turbidity, with a little more solids than we make the Sauvignon Blanc, and also it stays on the lees for 5 to 6 months, and I think part of this silky, creamy texture that we get from the wine, well, it's coming from this lees contact. It's very important to. Sometimes people don't like to use that because you can lose a bit of aromas, but I think what you gain, what you gain in the mouthfeel, is much more at the end. It's much more positive and important than what you can lose in the expression of the nose. It's still expressive, it's still aromatic, so we are making it not so protected and much more with least contact during this, and that's evolving every year, because I think that sort of mouthfeel really makes the wine much more interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the way you work the lees is interesting. As you say, you get a sort of creamy and a gentle mouthfeel, but you still get this lovely fresh acidity. But it just means, I think, the wine is more complete and has different nuances. And it doesn't make the wine sort of fat or rich. It just I think gives a little bit more texture to the mouth, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's the lees and this texture. It sort of holds the acidity, because the wine itself, if we look at the numbers, is really, the pH is very low. It has a lot of acidity because all the wines from this part of Chile, from the central coast, they're all very bright, very strong in natural acidity, which is.
I mean, your pHs are very low, aren't they? I mean, you don't do the MAULE, so I mean they're around 3, aren't they? 2.9, 3, 3.1. What are they?
Yeah, 3.1, 3.2. That's the average pH we have. Maybe this is a slightly warmer vintage, so it could be 3.2, but still very low. So, and I think this the least contact really helped to hold this acidity, because some of people, maybe the people that are more involved in the wines, we love the acidity. We love to get all that minerality and sort of edgy flavors in the palate. But a lot of consumers, acidity is something that is not really pleasant. So I think working the least contact and working the mouthfeel of the wine can hold a bit this acidity and makes it much better balance for the wine. So
yeah, I really like that expression you have, hold the acidity, because you could think that they might cancel each other out, mightn't you? That the lees might soften the wine, but in a sense, you sort of get the best of both worlds, don't you? You still have that lovely freshness, but you stop the wine being sharp and aggressive, and you just get it just coats the mouth with richness, and yet you still have the acidity. And I think it's a lovely combination of the two, which you might think could cancel each other out, but I think you almost have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, well, and that's the challenge, because we are avoiding malolactic, the secondary fermentation that makes the wine much more richer and less acidic, if you want to say, but don't get into too technical. We are, instead of leaving the wine doing the malolactic fermentation, we are working the lees, and it's a constant tasting the wine, and because if we go too far, we will lose that freshness that we don't want to lose. So I think and making the wine in a small scale, it really helps to have this balance very in a good place, you know. So it's I think, and also makes the wine much more interesting, because some people really like the nose of the wine, the aromatic, but also a lot of people, maybe the most, they really want to have some extra dimension in the palate. And I think with this kind of wine making, the wine gets much more complex in the palate and much more interesting to drink at the end.
Yeah, I think it's what I really like about your wines, because I think they have concentration, but they have freshness. They have a nice balance, and you want to drink another glass of them. I mean, some wines are so thick and rich and concentrated that you don't actually want to drink them. I think yours sort of tease the palate for another glass, and have lots of intensity and freshness, and this nice balance that actually makes you want to drink another glass. And I think the high acidity is actually what stands up to food too, isn't it? I think all the great food wines actually tend to have high acidity, low pH. The big fruit bombs that are really flashy, actually, if you sit down with a steak, they clash. Whereas these wines that seem a little bit more frail and a little bit more sort of delicate actually stand up very well to food, don't they?
Yeah. Well, that's why we are, as I mentioned before, we are in Chile. We're moving much more into cooler climates, because we are looking for more drinkability in our wines, with more freshness, with more gastronomical wines, instead of these bombs of fruit. So cooler climates and southern vineyards are getting much more interesting for us now. So.
Excellent. I'm just aware of the time, so I'm always the one who's a bit of a party pooper. We've got, I think you've got 3 other wines that you're wanting to taste through, and we've got a few questions that are coming in as well. So if we can move on to the Pinot, that would be absolutely amazing.
I'm sorry if I was too long, but
no,
Chile
not
is
at
a long
all. It
country,
was
so it's hard
absolutely
to...
fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
It's a long country.
No, but well,
I'm so pleased about sorry, go on.
No, you.
No, I'm so pleased about this wine, Las Lomas Pinot Noir, because what's nice about the Chilenos is if you say, oh, can you make me a wine like this? They're very happy to look at making wines for a market, which, you know, you would never dare ask a Burgundian to make you something. You go down on bended knee and take what they give you. But Chile is a very, Chile exports most of what it does, and it is very focused, turned towards its markets. And I think I asked Rafa, could you make, Rafael already makes our Sarti's red Pinot Noir, Chilean Pinot Noir. And I asked him, could you make a wine about 10 pounds? And he came up with some wonderful wines. And I think this wine is very, very special, and we're delighted it was a wine champion. And just look at the sales statistics, it sold 337% more than forecast. I think there were 2 other wines that sold more, but I mean, it sold really well. And I think for 10 pounds, you get a great bottle of Pinot. And for me, I think it's very special. I think the clone that's in this wine, isn't it?
Yeah, well, these are vines planted in 2007, so they're already more than 10 years. So I think they're a mature vineyard now, so we're getting much more concentration and depth in the wines in the last years. The material of this wine is a Dijon clone. It's a 828. That is it's a quite high quality clone from Dijon, from Burgundy, that is producing very well in the LEYDA Valley conditions. Together with the cool climate, we have very poor soils, slopes, granite slopes with some chalk influence that are making the vines to produce very small, very concentrated in flavors, but also in acidity and freshness. So it gives us the chance to pick very early to avoid the most sunny days from the summer, and get in the wine all the fruitiness, all the freshness of Pinot Noir, and all the acidity and brightness of it. So yeah, it was a nice challenge to make this wine, and I think we got it well, because it's very good to hear about the sales and the recognition of the wine, but it's we knew here in the winery that it's gonna be a good success, because again, we are 2,500 bottles that we make out of this special block, where we can combine the freshness and the saltiness, the vibrancy of LEYDA Valley, also with some sweetness from the flavor, with a little bit more generous palate that Toby was asking me for in this blend. And I think it's a very good example of maybe a richer and sweeter style than what we were making before from LEYDA. That wines are very herbal, less color, more vertical in some way. This Pinot Noir is very complete, so I think it fits many people without losing the character of the variety and the typicity of the place. For me, has the red berries aromas that we all look for in the Pinot Noir, but has a very nice, I think, like a red rose bud aroma, like a rose before blossoming, and that's very intense in this wine, and it makes it very special. Not a lot of wine smells has some floral or rose aromas, and I find in this Pinot Noir, and I think it's fascinating nose, and in the palate it's very fresh. So yeah, I think it was a good year to start with this wine.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for 10 pounds, that's as good as Pinot gets, really. I think it's tremendous. Time is moving on, Rafa. Maybe we should move south to another interesting climate. I mean, I think for a long time, I've been wondering, where are the Rhone varieties? Because you have, as you said, such an interesting climate. And down in MAULE, Cauquenes, you have very interesting climate for Mediterranean grape varieties, don't you?
Yeah, well, this Cauquenes region, MAULE, is in MAULE. It's 400 kilometers south of Santiago. And it's a fascinating region. It's very warm, but has some very cool influence, very cool nights. So it's an area where we found that we can, in the past, we were very stuck to Bordeaux and Burgundian varieties. Not a lot of people were making Mediterranean varieties, Rhone wines. And in Cauquenes, I think it's a place that climate, soil conditions really fit with that. And if you can move on the other slides, we can see where MAULE is. Also, it's very warm during the day, so the Rhone varieties can ripe properly, but in the nights it's very cool, so pH are quite low, and that combination makes wines that are very juicy, very generous in the nose and the palate, but with a nice freshness. So it's a perfect balance on that.
And you've planted a really wonderful, I mean, you have some old vines here, but you've planted some really nice vineyards, relatively high density, on slopes, something that 20 years, 25 years ago just wasn't done because you didn't have drip irrigation. You know, it was a central valley, pergolas, flood irrigation. I mean, for me, Chile has just changed so much, and your ability to make great wines is because you're planting really good varieties on slopes with poorer soils and closely monitored drip irrigation, so you can control the yield. And it's also a beautiful looking vineyard too, isn't it? It follows the contours of the land. And for me, the first time I tasted, you know, your blends down here, I was astonished by the quality.
Yeah, it's for us it was a challenge to see what to plant here, because here in the winery everyone wanted to plant just Cabernet because it's the variety that we sell the most. But the winemakers, we really wanted to try out these Rhone varieties, so we plant as many varieties from the Rhone as we could. We plant Viognier, Roussanne, Marsanne, Carignan, Grenache, Syrah, Petit Syrah, Mourvèdre, and I was looking forward to make a bottle of Marsanne, a bottle of Roussanne, a bottle of Viognier by itself. And at the beginning it was hard because we didn't have a lot of experience with these varieties. Vineyards, as you said, were very well planted, very good material. There's a picture of the vineyard, high density, so we can produce very low yields per plant, very nice granite slopes, but we didn't have a lot of experience in the varieties. But with a couple of years working with the wine, we realized that we can actually blend them, and as we discussed as many times. This blend, Viognier, Roussanne, Marsanne, is not a blend that is allowed by the rules of the Rhone Valley. So there are not many wines that, or many areas where you can actually combine these varieties. So we start blending and playing around with this, and finally we get this this blend that is made much better wine than all the wines by themselves. Viognier gives all the ripeness, the richness, the apricot, honey aromas in the wine. Is the more dominant maybe variety of this blend. But the role that play Roussanne and Marsanne, especially in the palate, giving some freshness, some citrusy acidity in the wine, makes it very unique. And very, very drinkable, I think. This is a wine that we have a lot of success with you in the Wine Society, and also we've been start selling here in Chile, and people don't a lot of people don't understand at the beginning the blend. They say, wow, these 3 varieties, but then drinking the wine, it really appeals many people. So, and it also, again, is important to talk about the place. You can get here the sun. It's a wine that is expressive, it's generous. You can, I think in the nose, you can get this a warm climate. You can feel the sun of the south of Chile, but also the freshness of a granite soil and how these 3 varieties complement each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting blend, as you say. You know, Condrieu in southern Rhone, it's 100% Viognier, and sometimes that's fantastic, but it tends to make a very, very rich apricot-y wine, sometimes quite heavy, quite round, sometimes some residual sugar. Roussanne and Marsanne, perhaps in their youth, have structure but very little aroma. And your blend, I think, is wonderful because you have the peachy, forthcoming aroma of the Viognier, but it's supported and given sort of depth and firmness and freshness by the Roussanne and the Marsanne. And I think it's a terrific wine because you have that perfume, but it's not too much, and you have the structure too. And I think the combination of the 2 is tremendous. And I think, you know, congratulations for having come upon this blend from a perspective of not knowing the varieties. I think, as I was saying, you know, Rafa's very intelligent, and to come up with this sort of blend after only a few years working, I think is a mark of basically, you know, his intelligence, and also, you know, the very forward-thinking aspects of Chile, where they're very, very quick to learn and develop things. And you know, I think this is a really interesting wine.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should move on to the last one, Rafa, because we're probably time is moving on.
Yeah, then we can have some time for questions if there are any. Well, and the last wine is also from the Cauquenes area. It's 100% Carignan, but this comes from old vines, bush vines, dry farm bush vines that are 70, 75-year-old vines. So they've been there for decades, producing wines more for domestic market, just cheap wine for many years. And in the last 15, 20 years, some winemakers, we've been rescuing this variety because the vineyards are fascinating. It's everything what you expect. Small vines, very old, dry farm, beautiful landscape, and they produce very, I think, a very different expression of Carignan, because Carignan is worldwide. It's not known as a fine variety. Most of people consider it's like we're very football fan here in Chile, so we call it like a second division variety. It's not in the first, it's not in the Premier League, you know, of the varieties. And normally people used to blend it, but by itself, people find that it's too aggressive, too rustic. But here in these vineyards, after 75 years of the plant living and producing, it gives us really, really nice fruit to work with. And we have been learning and understanding how to manage it, when to pick it, and how to vinify with a very gentle extraction. And I think we're getting to a very nice and even soft wines after some years. So I think Carignan from Maule are really, it's really, really special. It's not a Carignan from any other part of the world because of the conditions of soil, climate, and age of the vines. Also the understanding of winemakers to really get the best out of it. And at the end, we get a wine that is it's actually very fresh. It's a very like red cherry driven in the nose, very expressive, very unique, and also with a lot of acidity, a lot of tannins, a lot of flavors. So it's a lot of everything, but because of these old vines, all is in balance. So it's hard to find a wine with a very low pH, very high alcohol, a lot of tannins, a lot of flavors in balance, because it's a lot of everything. But I think these old vineyards, they're very loyal in a way, and they give you very, very balanced and interesting wine. So we've been working the last 10 years with Cariñán in Maule with huge success, because it's really something interesting and special. And I'm really happy that you have, well, from the very beginning, you noticed that there was something special in this variety, and we developed this special blend for you. So it's and I think it's showing really well after 3 years of 1 year of in barrels and almost 2 years in bottle is showing really nice.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. I mean, obviously, I think young Carignan is tricky, but old vine Carignan, you know, Marcel buys some wonderful ones from the south of France. And I think you get this nice old vine texture somehow with older vines, because you have a balance of the root system and the vigor of the plant is reduced. And I think you end up just, the plant knows after 70 years how to produce lovely grapes, and it does so. And I think the bush vines are very interesting. I mean, most Chilean vineyards are sort of vertically shoot positioned, which allows sometimes too much sun. The nice thing about Carignan has very upright growth, doesn't it? And it sort of produces a sort of a sunshade, because the grapes hang down underneath the leaves. You get dapple shade, and so you get you avoid sunburning, but you get the grapes very ripe. And I think everything you say on the palate is right. I think Carignan is quite a linear wine, isn't it? It's something to go with the fatty cuts of meat, oxtail or shoulder of lamb, a nice sausage, entraña, your wonderful steak that you get out there. And it's very long and mineral, and as you say, it's fresh, it has high tannin acidity, but in an old vine like that, there's a sort of, it's not harsh or aggressive, there's a harmony about that, and it's a very interesting flavor profile.
Yeah, I think so.
Emma, I think it's probably time for questions, is it?
It is definitely time for questions, and they've really been coming in thick and fast. So we've picked out a few. We've had to combine a couple because we are aware of time. So I'm just going to do kind of rapid fire, if that's okay. The first question came from Andrew Marston, and he said, it's not a question about the wine itself, but could Rafael explain the meaning and the history behind the carved figure on the labels of Las Lomas wines?
I didn't get all the.
So
again.
the on Las Lomas, the wine labels, you have a carved figure.
Okay.
Where does that come from?
Okay. Well, Toby chose it. We have a rincón. We have a corner in the winery where we have some, because in the winery we have a collection of pre-Columbian figures, hats. I don't know what's the name of the. Can you help me with that, Toby?
Scarves, or you have a lovely collection of textiles.
Yeah.
Woven textiles.
Yeah. And all from pre-Columbus area. And natives in Chile were the Mapuches, and we have a Mapuche corner where we have a chemule. Chemule is this figure, and this is a sacred figure where the natives here in Chile they pray, and it was the connection between God and humans, and they built this big statues out of native wood, and we have a couple of that in the winery to sort of honor these people. So when we develop these labels, that are all exclusive labels for the Wine Society, Toby in every one of his visits, he really liked these figures and all of the collection we have, and it was a good connection to bring something very Chilean into the label. So that's the reason.
Fantastic. That's really interesting.
It's a bit like the North American totem poles of the Indians who carved the wood. I mean, it's a similar sort of thing, but Rafa's explained the significance, and There's a paragraph on the back label explaining that as well. Just in case you forget after too many glasses of the wine.
Or after the bottle's been finished.
Yeah.
So there's been a couple of questions in which we've amalgamated. With such a wide diversity of terroir, with such vast distances between the different vineyards, the different terroirs, how do you create the best winemaking processes to produce such great wines from such diverse areas? And do you have an assistant winemaker responsible for each individual region?
It's a very interesting question, because when we decide to produce seriously wines from all these different areas, like this map showing here, there's a Terra Hunter is like the brand that hold all of this project of vineyards across Chile together. It was a big question how to make it. We thought about making the wines in the different regions, have some people in different regions, but at the end, I realized that I want to make the wines personally. So the one that needs to travel, it was actually me. So I travel a lot around Chile to taste these vineyards, to understand the vineyards, to know when to pick.
Rafa, how many kilometers do you drive a year?
It's like 25,000 average. And some years it's even more. And I don't go and I don't move in winter, so it's mainly in like 5 months. But yeah, it's a very important part of the winemaking. But then I realized that also the control of winemaking and the winemaking decisions that you need to make every day or every hour during the fermentation is also important. So I prefer to concentrate all the wines in one cellar, which is here fortunately Santiago is quite in the center. So we managed to harvest very early in the morning, each block. Then we hold the grapes under the shade in the state, and it travels by night. And the night in Chile is really cold, so it actually cools down the fruit at night. And then next day we wake up with the grapes fresh and cool to process them. And I think that's
the other thing that makes that possible, Rafa, isn't it, is that you have a very long harvest, so that you have time to empty the tanks, because you start the harvest when and you finish it when. I mean, it's very long harvest in Chile, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very long. It's like more than 4 months, because we start at some years the end of January and we finish by the end of May in some years. So it's really long. So we can have the space to do that, because all the regions they ripe in different parts of the different months, different weeks. But yeah, I prefer to move the winery very gentle, hand harvest, small cases, move to the winery, and then we have everything here. So I think it's much more control. And of course, I have one assistant winemaker. She's really good. She stays more in the cellar while I'm traveling, tasting the grapes, and we get along very well. And yeah, she's important. She's Pilar, and she's very important in the winemaking results, because she's and we share the same intention and an idea of style. So it's been a good a lot of help.
Excellent. So we've got 2 final questions to finish up on. A very quick one. What does dry farming mean? This is from Adam.
Yeah, dry farm is because in Chile and in a lot of areas in the New World, we need to irrigate the vines, the vineyards, which is not necessarily bad, because it's the only way that you can produce wine in California, Australia, New Zealand, Chile, many parts of the world. Maybe the old world is the area where people have planted vineyards in regions that you don't need to irrigate because you have rain during the winter, but also during the spring and even during the summer, because the plants need water all the year round. In Chile, we have a very dry summer, so 98% of the vineyards we need to irrigate, which again is not necessarily bad if you do it properly, but some people could think, well, you irrigate, you change the terroir, and that's a huge discussion that we've had with people of wine. But what dry farm really helps to the wine, I think, to the vines, I think is that everything is in balance, because these old vines in 70 years of their lives, they've been adapting to the place. So there's no other irrigation, there's no other water available than the rain of the winter. So they really need to go with their roots very deep in the floor, in the soil, to get the humidity. So we have found roots down to 4 meters down. There's still some roots of the vines. So they're naturally getting balance, and they produce very, very small berries and small clusters and low yields. So I think it's everything about the balance and the adaptation of the vines to the terroir.
Excellent. Okay. So, well, I think we're probably going to have to wrap it up there, because I am very aware of time, but it's been so fascinating. I think that we could have all have just sat here for the rest of the evening and heard you talking about the wine. So thank you ever so much. We do have the full range of wines that on the website. And we will be sending out an email tomorrow to everybody to say what these wines are. Otherwise, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much to you, Rafael, and to you, Toby, as well, for giving up your evening and coming and talk. Well, your afternoon, your evening, Toby, talking to us about Undurraga's wines. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much. And
my pleasure.
Members, thank you so much for joining us, and hope you've enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry if I got too long, but it was very fun.
Not at all. It was fantastic.
Rafa, thanks very much indeed. Always a pleasure to spend time with you, and great talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.